I want to introduce my lovely guest, Celia Hodent, PhD, is an expert in cognitive psychology and game user experience. She has worked for Ubisoft, LucasArts, and Epic Games. She is a consultant, speaker, and the acclaimed author of the books, The Gamer's Brain, How Neuroscience and User Experience Can Impact Video Game Design, and The Psychology of Video Games. Please help me welcome a master of game design, Celia Hodent. Hooray,
Hey,
this is where all the cheering would happen right now. Yay. Oh, look, we have some applause. Yay, excellent. All right. Well, Celia, thank you very much for joining us. So let me start. We always start the Masters of Game Design with an extremely hard question. And that question is, Celia Hodent, what is your favorite game?
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's a hard question. Oh my, can we define a date in time? Like when I was a little kid or a teenager or
whatever you want. Usually for me, it's whatever I played last week, I guess. But no, whichever one, whatever was most influential for you as a child, whatever is the one that you love the most, that you've spent the most time playing, whatever your favorite one is.
It's hard. So the most time playing is probably World of Warcraft. The most.
Are you Alliance or Horde?
Horde.
Horde. Oh, excellent.
Yeah, always. But I haven't played for a long time. But when I was a kid, I think the most influential was probably Advanced Dungeons and Dragons on television. Right. So that's a long time ago.
Yeah, excellent. You worked that little disc. Very difficult to operate disc.
It was terrible UX.
It was terrible.
But it was interesting.
I'm surprised the early years of gaming survived all those bad controllers.
Well, it nearly died, remember?
That's true. It did nearly die. I wonder if that had anything to do with it. Well, that's great. What was it about Advanced Dungeons and Dragons that you liked so much?
The sound design. That was just amazing.
Oh, sound design. Yeah.
So I don't know if you folks remember or even played that game, but you're in a maze and you have to uncover the maze, but you don't see anything before you get, you move forward. And so it's advancing with you. And so there's some enemies over there, and you have enemies that make noise, like the dragon. The dragon does like that. And you have the snake, and the snake does a weird sound for a snake, but whatever. So you also have the bat, and the bat is not really hurting you, but it's if there's the bat around you, then you can't hear the other monsters. So it's hiding the other sounds. It was just like brilliant game design and sound design. I just loved it.
Yeah, you'd think that with games like that, because I remember that game as well. I was a big pen and paper Dungeons and Dragons fan at the time, and so of course there's a video game, I have to go check this out, right? And so I had a neighbor who had the Intellivision, and so I would go over to his house and kick him off the TV, and I'd play the game. and all those sounds you were making, all my memories come back. Of the snake in particular is a very memorable sound. But I'm curious. I mean, we'll jump around a little bit as we talk, but sound design, of course, is a very important part of the user experience. And I curious, why do you think it's so hard for some game developers to remember to incorporate sound design into their designs? Because often sound gets left to the last minute, right? It's, the game is done, and oh, by the way, we need some sounds for our guns and our footsteps. Right. Yeah. Why do you think?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think of all the human is very focused on vision for a big part, and yeah, like even like when I was working at LucasArts, I remember like it's well known that George Lucas was saying, well, sound is 50% of the experience, and so he had to remind that to people. And I don't know, for me, sound has always been very important.
Oh yeah.
So it's always been a thing. But I was hanging out with sound designers, more specifically at Ubisoft, who were hanging out, and at LucasArts, and I was always trying to bring them back in the loop and make sure they were really part of the thing. And most of the time they're a bit forgotten, and they do their things, and their little room, soundproofed room, so they can't even no one knows they're there because it's soundproof.
That's right. Yeah, they're hiding away from the world. So when you were hanging out with all these sound designers, did you get to make some sounds or do some voices for the games?
No, not in video games. I did that when I was working at VTech, like it was a toy manufacturer.
Oh,
so
yeah, and the toy.
Yeah.
So there's toys with your voices.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
It's in French. There's one I'm singing and doing. Yeah.
Oh, very cool.
I love doing that stuff. Yeah. Like, as you can see, I can do the dragon pretty well. Like,
yeah. Next time I need a dragon, I'll give you a call.
Please do.
Well, maybe we'll rip the sound from this interview and use that for the.
Yeah.
For
I can also do the dolphin if.
Let's hear it.
Dolphin. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Okay, I can only do the clicks. Sorry, I can do the ultras.
No, I love sound design. As a matter of fact, on many of the games that I helped design, I often was the one that ended up making all the temp sound for everything before it went to guys like Tommy Tallarico and whatever. And so I would do all the voices, and I actually have some voices in a few of the games because of they were like. I kept going, you're doing the pirate wrong. That's not how and they're like, we'll just use you instead. And so I'm a pirate.
So how do you
in a
do the
couple
pirate?
Of course you go. Arr.
There you
go. and for some reason the voice actor couldn't do arr. And I'm like, oh come on, it's just this here. Step aside, I'll be the pirate. Anyway, so yeah, it's amazing to me that that sound design and a lot of the things that you mention in your lectures and your wonderful books are things that tend to get left behind or tend to get kind of used at the last minute. And one of the things that I really have enjoyed about watching your talks is it really lets people know that, hey, this isn't as hard or mysterious as it needs to be. There's a lot of great psychological, for lack of a better word, manipulation that you can do with good user interface, but the fact that it's so rarely built into the design from the front end. I guess that means that there's plenty of opportunity for you to come in and save the day.
Well, save the day. I don't know about that, but it's true that I've been repeating quite a bit the same thing. So I feel like a broken record.
Well, that's why you wrote a book, right?
Yeah.
So they could just read it.
Yeah, sure. But it's like, read my books, a little bit pompous. But yeah, oftentimes I'm asked to do the same presentation and go through the same things because there's still a lot of people who don't know that or need a reminder. So maybe one day we can talk about something else. But it's cool. I love it. I just love it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that's why I wrote a book too. So that way I could just say, read my book first.
Your book is awesome. I really enjoy your book.
Thank you very much. Did you try the chili recipe?
No.
I ask everybody that. Everybody's like, wait, what? All right. So let's get back to you. So when did you first start playing games and what was it about them that first drew you to them?
I don't even remember. I was too young. It was on the Philips Magnavox Odyssey.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah.
So I was a young
you're
child.
not that old. Surely you can't be that old to play on the Magnavox.
I think I played the first time in the 1980s, something like that. I was young.
Okay.
I don't even remember it. That's how young I was, but I remember the feeling, and I remember later on when my parents were talking about it. But my parents, like, they love tech tools and new things, and my mom is always buying the new thing that comes up. And my dad always loved that. We were playing a lot, so that's the thing in my family. This is how we bond. We play.
Yeah, that's great.
Board games, card games, and video games. So my father was the one, I think, who bought this. Maybe it was my mom. I don't know. But it was more playing like with my dad. With my mom, we were playing with the Game & Watch.
Yeah.
So stuff like that. So it was part of the things that we were doing, just like any other games.
Right.
So you're natural to me.
you're a born gamer.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So you earned your degree at the University of Paris at Sorbonne, right? Pardon my French. I'm not a native French speaker. And you studied.
So you can do the pirate better than you can do the French.
Yeah, I speak pirate better than I speak French. So you went to school for cognitive development, and you worked with toddlers. for your degree. That was your awesome. So how did working with toddlers prepare you for working in the game industry?
I don't think it did much.
You don't think so?
No,
not even for the developers that sometimes act like toddlers.
So I'm not gonna go that route. No, I mean, well, what was useful is like I learned how we develop cognition, and so cognitive development is how we study mental processes, and my specialty was how this develops in
Right.
kids. So, and I study more about numbers and how the concept of number develops with kids. But the cool part of it is I was making games with them because they're very young and some of them were not speaking very well. So I had like a little theater with little Mickeys, and I was hiding some of the Mickeys, and it was just like a thing when I actually do some impossible additions or subtractions, like 1 + 1 = 3. And it was just like looking at how they reacted. So anyways, it was still like through games that we're doing that, I guess.
That's cool. That's great. But you graduate, you get this degree, you are an expert in this field. And is it true that you become a rock star?
Well, I wish I did. And that's because I did not. I had to switch gear.
You had to switch gears, but you did you tour? Was it locally or did you tour around as a musician?
Locally.
Locally. Okay.
In France. Yeah.
I tried to find evidence of your band, and I could not find anything online.
Yeah, that was before YouTube.
You guys could re-release something for your fans.
I still have a box full of CDs from my band. So if you still have a CD player,
I still have one. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
I'll send one to you if you want.
That would be great. So why did you walk away from the rock and roll life to go into games?
It's the rock and roll life that walked away from me. That's the other way around. It was really bad timing because it was in France in the early 2000s. Rock was really not a thing over there. It's electronic music and rap music, but rock, like, it's coming a bit more today, but back then it was really hard. So Pearl Jam and bands like that, it was not really a thing in France. Well, it was, but it was not real as to get in. It was really too difficult, and maybe also it's not as good. Probably that's the part that was the most.
Well, it's probably a little more stable, at least back then in games, right? It was a little bit like for myself, I was working in film, and when I'd say, "Oh, do I work in the film industry?" and every time I'm done with a film, I have to try and find a new job again, or do I work for this video game company that, oh, hey, we're just going to make another project, And so for me, it was that stability that lured me to the game industry.
Interesting.
But you ended up at a company called Teleimages, is that correct?
Oh,
and you
gosh. So this is not even like super anecdotal. No, these people, like television people, and they were like, "Oh, we're gonna make a game," and they hired me and a friend of mine because we were from psychology, and they wanted to make a game on psychology. They had no idea how to make a game, and of course, it failed. It was very fun.
How do you make a game on psychology? Because nowadays that's, as you know, anything is valid as a theme for a game, right? Like anything goes. You can make it about anything. Psychonauts, right? Yeah, that's just, it's yes, it is. It is. It's funny because I know Tim and I. Anyway, the point is, it's fantastic.
I really played a lot, yeah.
and I can't wait for the new one. I think they're working on the new one right now, right? But what was it like? How were you able to apply your knowledge as a psychologist to this kind of game? Like, what kind of things were you doing? Like, what kind of gameplay were you creating around this?
I was not really working on gameplay. It was more about the ambience. So it was like a mist like
Oh,
game.
okay. Yeah.
And so the idea was just defining as you go through the game, it was the different stage of development. So for example, the
Oh,
first
okay.
stage, it was more like a aquatic world, because like you just got out of the womb, and it was just every time there was a thing that you had to unlock or understand, and was getting you to the next stage. It was just
Right. Did it end with adulthood or death, or what was the what was the
So there was
final?
death. There was
Yeah.
death at some point. Was more about getting over it. I don't
Oh,
actually
okay.
remember how it ended. It was no, it was really. I mean, it was cool. I was like so
Yeah.
excited. It was like, oh, cool! I'm gonna make a game. It was the first time, but it was so remote. Like these were not people who knew how to make games. And in retrospect, it's just funny because now I have all the people, the game designers. I like have all these people who want to make games. They have no idea how to do that. And
Right.
yeah, so this is how I got in the first time,
Nice.
but it was really, really silly.
Well, yeah. I mean, everybody's first gig is always a little weird, or
Yeah.
whatever. It takes a little time to find your niche, right, in games. But it sounds like you found something that was a little closer to what you were used to, which was working at a company called VTech, which was a toy manufacturer, educational game manufacturer. And the year, if I understand correctly, the year that you joined, they were like riding really high. They had just won like Toy of the Year for the V Smile, and like I remember those toys. I remember seeing them on the shelves. And that, were you involved with the development or anything with those games or toys?
Yes, it was more about adapting these games for the French market, and especially since they label them as educational, which I have a problem with because they don't really test them to verify if it is indeed
Oh,
educational.
okay.
It's not because there's ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. It's not enough to say that a game is educational. But anyway, that aside, it was more to make it to adapt it to the French market, or to what kids learn at school at what age in France. So it was more about adapting these things, and occasionally doing a voice.
Right. Or singing, doing some singing,
or
right?
singing for the
Using
Be My
that,
Baby. Yep.
using that rock and roll background of yours.
No, it was more like, nursing
Nursery rhymes and
rhymes.
yeah, nursery rhymes. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, well, that's an interesting.
I did redo a bunch of music. It was MIDI files.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Because sometimes I was receiving files and they were just horrible. It was like, what the hell? Because it's a toy manufacturer, and all other stuff were coming from China, and it was also some games made from the US. And then it was just too many people were involved, and we're just like, and sometimes I was receiving files like, what the hell is this? So I was spending a lot of time, outside of my working hours to actually correct this file, so the sound would sound correct and was not like horrible and out of tune, because I could not. Like that was the thing. That was the bar I could not go over.
Right.
Like it has to sound correct and not.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole point of if you're going to put music or sound into any sort of game or toy, it's got to sound pleasing, right?
You'd be surprised.
That's the whole point of it. No, I wouldn't be surprised. I've been doing this for a long time.
We should be surprised. That's the thing that's depressing.
That's true. Yeah, right. We should say, hey, wait, this was a rarity, but unfortunately, not always the case. But you bring up an interesting thing that I'd like to ask you about, which is, you said that you were doing localization for the French market with these toys. What is an example of something that was maybe showed up in, were these were coming from China or from America? Where was the origin of the content?
So it was manufactured in China, but the content was developed first in America. And so the idea was just to adjust to France. Like, for example, I don't remember when you learn how to read a clock in America, but it's not necessarily at the same age that in France, just because of the curriculum is a bit different. So we were just adapting that sort of things. And so making it more, French-like. And sometimes we had the opportunity to create toys. So the one I was super proud of, it was a fridge, and you had all the food in there, and it was adding some cool food, and the blue food was the wahoo, like, because on W, because you have to use these letters and you have to find a food that works with W. And in France, It's complicated. There's not a lot of words starting with W. And so I found the fish that calls the wahoo. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. So yeah, I was super proud of it, but that flopped very badly.
Oh no.
But the music was good.
But the music was good. Cool. Very cool. What kind of considerations did you have to take when you were making, was there anything in the making of the physical toy that you later on found when you were working with teams, you were like, oh, this is kind of like transferring the knowledge or the experience with the physicality of making the toys? Was there any moment that you had later on when you were doing video games that you're like, oh, this is just like the virtual version of what I did for this other thing?
No, not really. And to be honest, my time at VTech was not super fulfilling. It's not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was not. It was not. Yeah, there's many things that I thought I would be able to do, and think about child development and make it more fun and more. It wasn't any of that. And
They weren't interested in that.
The problem is that this sells very well, and parents buy these things just because they want to have toys that educate, and it seems that there are letters in there, so it seems educational. And so it was a bit frustrating for me because I've always wanted better user experience, and that was not really what I expected. And the physicality of it was already decided, like all the molds and stuff like that. We only had an impact on the program, so sometimes we had little laptops to work on, the V-Smile cartridges, so that was more stuff like that.
Gotcha.
So it was not super fascinating, really. I was glad to move on to Ubisoft, to be honest.
Yeah. And so in 2008, you started working at Ubisoft's Strategic Innovation Lab, and you helped develop their games for everyone. So I don't know if many people are familiar with the lab and what they do. Can you describe a little bit about your work there? What did you guys do there at the lab?
Oh, I was actually doing a lot of communication because even at Ubisoft, they did not really know what the lab was doing. So I was making a lot of videos with music to explain what we do, what we did, what they still do. So it's a think tank that reports to the CEO, Yves Guillemot. And the idea is to, be aware of the new technologies. I know that working a lot on blockchain today, or back in the day, was how we could use, because the Kinect was just coming out. So how we can use gesture to do interesting things. Because Ubisoft always had this motto of enriching players and not just bringing entertainment, but try to bring something more. And so I was hired with that spirit to try to, because they were interested into neuroscience and kind of psychology, and how they could make their life. So the game for everyone was mostly on DS back then, and they had stuff like my word coach or my ACT coach, and so the idea was to help them out. So that's the thing that I thought I would be doing at VTech that I was not really doing, is to really try to see what we can change to help players learn better and more efficiently these things. So that was cool. I had a lot of fun over there.
Yeah, I remember the My Coach series, and I always thought it was fascinating. What I really liked about it is the really wide variety of educational content you guys created for that. You had languages, you had fitness, you had cooking, you even had something that helped people try to stop smoking, which is amazing, right? Like, I've never seen that before in any, in the game medium. But let me ask you, there's often in the gaming industry, there's often a bit of a bias against this kind of educational content. And so
good reason, I would say.
I mean, it's, there's the metaphor of the chocolate covered broccoli, right? Like it's, we're trying to get you to eat the broccoli, and hey, if we put chocolate on it, that's going to be delicious, right? No, unfortunately it's just gross. But as somebody who has done, work in this area, what advice would you have for, a game developer who is like, look, we want to make something that has the intention to educate. What can we do to make sure that it doesn't end up as this chocolate covered broccoli?
Yeah, that's a great question that requires a long answer, but I'll try to make it short.
Give me a long answer. I don't
care. Okay, so the thing is, you need to understand how people learn. That's the first thing. And if you're not versed into that, you need to read books or to hire experts that can help you out. Then if you really want to make it educational, ultimately you have to test it, just like we test our games, we test QA. Your game needs to not only be fun, but also really teach something, because it's one thing to learn something within the game itself. It's another thing to be able to transfer what you learn in the game onto a new situation, which is the whole point of education, because otherwise it's just you learn, it's just instruction. And so that's the part that's really delicate. It's really, really hard to accomplish for any game. We very rarely observe that transfer. We actually do with video games, like action games. We see that transfer of learning, but more for visual attentional skills. So we can really follow multiple enemies. If you play a game like Medal of Honor, this is transferring to your capability to do that in real life. So that's already a great feat by itself. But even games like chess, like people always say, oh, it makes you smarter. It does not, actually. So it's good for certain skills, but it's not transfer that far. And so what you want to do is, first of all, understand how the brain learns, and try also to understand what's the meaning. Because sometimes people just say, oh, we're just going to make a game, it's going to make everything fun. I'm like, well, not necessarily. So what is it you're trying to teach? And does it make sense to make it a game? Because sometimes it doesn't necessarily make sense to make a game. Maybe it's more about having a scientific method, or try to experiment something that would make more sense, and making it engaging, and understanding how to engage people. It's not necessarily making it a game with points and something to do that's going to help. So that's the first thing. What is it you're trying to teach? Does it make sense to add to have a real game design? If it does, like so we can try to do that. But let's move away from gamification and just adding points, because this is not enough to make it again, as you know. And you need to learn how the brain learns, because it's quite complicated, and it's not that easy to learn something efficiently. That would be the long story short. And also, it's really important it depends on your audience. If it's adults or teenagers or children, because children are not smaller adults. They have a very different cognition. They have different limitations that adults have. And so it's important to take that into account.
Right. Oh, that's great. That's all extremely helpful knowledge. There was something that I came across in your talk, and you were talking about player engagement, right? So this idea of you got to get them engaged. It's not just good enough to give them the information. And this was a quote you talked about somebody named Graham McAllister from Play Research. Mm-hmm. And you said that there's 3 layers. They said that this person said there's 3 layers of player engagement: this understanding, this knowledge, and then there's gameplay, right? We have to have recognition of all of these things. And it reminded me a lot of the shorthand that I've heard that Valve uses, which is they have like a 5-step thing, right? Which is like you hear about the gun, and then you see the gun, and then you see somebody using the gun, and then you finally get the gun, and then you finally get to use the gun, right? Like there's this engagement aspect of it. What are some, like, how can game designers, this seems like a very simple thing to keep in mind, but yet people forget about it all the time, right? Like you're gonna sense this.
Yeah, because our memory is fallible. That's the thing.
Right.
We forget things. That's why we need checklists.
Yes, we do. Yeah, we need the checklists. That's right. That's right. I mean, how can we as game creators, what are some good methods that you found when you work with these developers to help them remember to institute this type of thinking as they go through the process?
Yeah. So the thing I always say is that make sure that what you're doing and what you're asking the players to do is going to be meaningful to them at that moment. Because sometimes they're like, oh yeah, it's going to be meaningful to have a larger backpack. But the player right now doesn't need a bigger backpack, so they don't really care. They want the thing that goes boom, and that's more exciting. So even if it means something to the game designer, and we can understand why, it's not going to be meaningful for the player at that moment because their backpack is not full. So I use the thing that we game designers use a lot, that notion of locks and keys. It's better to show a lock first, to have to be confronted with an obstacle. And then this is when you give the key. And if you teach players how to use the key, this is when they really care about it, because thanks to the key they can unlock. So that's what we did on Fortnite, for example. And Save the World, the first time that players need to build, we don't tell them, hey, this is how you build. We actually place them in a situation where they're in a cave and they got at the bottom of the cave, and now they can see the sky, and they could get out, but they can't get out. To get out, they need to build stairs. Nintendo does that all the time. Zelda, like you get a new weapon, like the grappling hook at the, after you see poles everywhere, and like, what is this does? And there's a pole next to a chest. How do I get there? And then you get the grappling hook. And so it's always important that every time you introduce something new, players should already understand why is this meaningful for them to use this or to learn how to use it.
Yeah, it reminds me of that quote. I think it is, oh gosh, and now I forget who it is. It might be Sid Meier, who says, games are nothing but a series of meaningful choices.
Yep.
So, and what I like about what you're talking about is it feels, game design is this idea of there's kind of big choices, things that I want to get to over the course of the game. And then there's little tiny choices like building that staircase to just get out of the space.
Yeah.
No,
Brenda
that's
Romero,
great.
Brenda Romero says that quite often as well. I think it's a great way and super straightforward. Explains it all.
Yeah. If only we can remember it, right?
Right. That's that's another story.
Yes, it is another story. So you developed while you were at Ubisoft, you were developing also something called you're working at what's called the Design Academy, which is it a program? Is it an institution? How is
so this was just a program that Ubisoft put in place back then, and they wanted to have all the designers and gameplay programmers and game directors and art directors to be all aligned with the editorial direction and to make sure that they had like 2 weeks to think about their craft, and that was super exciting. So for 2 weeks, I think it was 2 weeks, they were coming to France near Paris, like in a little castle. And I
want to go to France, castle, and just talk about game design. All right, that sounds fantastic.
It was super cool. So it was 2 weeks where they were just like discussing about their craft and had to do a paper prototype and all of that. And I had a half a day to explain how the brain learns and explain what it means for tutorial onboarding and all that sort of thing. And back then it was not as formalized as I doing it today, but it started there. Like it was back in 2008 when I started to put that course together to explain how the brain learns and the limitations in terms of memory and stuff like that, so that I could help them make sure to they could convey what they need to convey to the players in a way that's not boring and that's exciting. Yeah. But that was super cool because it lasted quite a bit. I think I did that for over a year. And so during that year, I saw a lot of game developers, and we chatted a lot of things, and they were coming from all the different game franchises like Assassin's Creed and Far Cry and whatever. And it was really cool because every time I was discussing about new problems they were having, and they were telling me about the constraints. It was really, really cool to me. I was like, I really want to get into a production and work, have that be in the trenches. It seems hard, but it seems really exciting as well.
It is exciting, but I think what you're doing is maybe more exciting because otherwise you're not like moving a coin 3 inches, now let's save, move. No, wait, that's not the right place. Let me move it over another 3 inches. Nope, that's not right. Let me, so you were like a psychologist for game designers, right? Like they would come to you with their problems. Would they have to lay on the couch and like, I'm having this problem, I'm trying to figure out what to do for Far Cry, and then you would sit there and be like, all right, tell me about your game.
I didn't start that way. It was more like, who's that chick? Why do I need someone with a degree in psychology? Like, I don't want to make games. So it was, no, it didn't happen that way. But through the Design Academy, this is when it was, I could show them how they could use it. And I was the one listening, not to their problems, but yes, but I was the one learning through these years, because I could understand what they were their constraints and why is it so hard, and so that helped me try to make sure what I was telling them could be applicable and not just like theory, because theories are cool and it's cool to understand how the brain works, but what does it mean for my game, you know? So yeah, it took a while for me to get there and to be really useful to them, rather than, you know, the psych chick, like, you know, what does she know about games?
That's their fault for making that assumption.
I get it. I mean, it's a lot of pressure, especially in a, you know, in a big company and you work on a big game. It's you know, sometimes you're not open to all these new like opinions everywhere, and that's why I was like, so first of all, I'm not a designer and I'm paid to design for you, and second of all, I'm not going to give you my opinions. I'm going to try to give you an analysis. So I was always trying to be clear with these 2 points.
Well, that's a trap, though, that and the students that I teach game design to, I tell them that they're doing themselves as game designers. You think that you have to come up with everything yourself, and they're doing themselves a huge disservice by doing that, because they're, you know, I mean, I would have loved to have a sounding board, particularly one who is knowledgeable as you, to be able to bounce ideas off of, because, you know, not only are you coming from it from this very different perspective, this psychology perspective, but you're also coming to it as a gamer. So you know about games and how to play games. And so it's a lot like when I talk about making paper prototypes, and I tell my students, particularly when they're doing tabletop games, I say, you always want to get advice first from a game designer or somebody who makes games, because this allows you to just kind of bypass, like you speak the same language as I do. You know, we both speak the same language. We speak game. And so there's a lot of things that I could talk about, both game related and even like nerdy things. You know, we could talk about Star Wars or Harry Potter or whatever, and you know exactly what I'm talking about, and I know exactly what you're talking about. So all those barriers have been removed, and we can just get to the problem, which is, you know, hey, I've got this problem. How can I solve it? And then you're thinking about it as someone who is in the game industry, and you go, well, you know, as my perspective, it's this, and this, and it allows you to like get to those things that need to be solved faster. And so, you know, I'm honestly, when I found out about this, and I'd heard about the Academy years ago, and I was always like, why doesn't that exist for more companies? Because to be honest, do you know of any other companies that do this? I don't. I mean, I worked for Sony, I worked for Namco, I worked for like a lot of big companies, and none of them had anything even closely resembling. The one thing we had was THQ. We did have occasionally, like, the creative directors would all get together and have kind of a summit, but that was about the closest that we ever got for that. Now, when I worked at Disney, we did stuff like this all the time. We brought in experts and had them come and talk, and we would problem solve and things like that.
Yeah, I didn't see that happening again. Well, I mean, in many companies, even at LucasArts, we're doing workshops and stuff like that, but nothing as big as like 2 weeks and lockdown in a castle when we speak, you know, we talk about games and we prototype and we have groups and each like show their paper prototype. That was really cool. I really learned a lot. But you were talking about vocabulary and speaking the same language. I had to learn that language. Because to be fair to game developers, I mean, you see a lot of people coming from academia and, you know, Sorbonne and blah, blah, blah. And like, oh, yeah, these are going to be like very pompous people. And they're going to, and I can't understand that, because this is actually the reason why I left academia, because I felt it was a little bit snobbish. And so I can get that. And I think it's important. It was really important to me to understand the language and read all these books, including yours, to understand better what they, you know, what the problems they have to solve, and so I could speak their language. And this is always what I try to do, to speak the same language. And this is what I've been trying to establish afterwards when I found out, oh, this is actually UX. This is actually what I'm doing. And that's the thing, you know, speaking the same language is really important.
Oh, absolutely. And I think even if, you know, on the development team perspective, you know, if you are a game designer, you still need to be able to speak art and programming, right? And programmers need to be able to speak design and art, and artists need to be able to speak design and programming, right? It's you have to become multilingual, right? Just like in the world, right? The more languages you speak, the better the flow of communication is, the more harmony and joy we can create together, right?
Yep, I totally agree.
Awesome. Well, I love it. I would love to see the Celia Hodent chain of academies, gaming academies, spread throughout the industry. I think that's something that we definitely could use.
I don't think people should let me do that. Yeah, because
I don't know. Maybe we get to go to castles or something, right?
That would be awesome. Not that, but then it's gonna be too much booze and rock and roll, and that's not gonna end well.
I don't know. It sounds like the game industry already.
Yeah, but the game industry is not inclusive because of that. So
no, that's
a problem.
All right. Well, we'll have to find out what that version is then. We'll just make some adjustments.
You should try to find it and make sure everybody can have fun and everybody can feel included and welcome.
And everybody is welcome. Exactly. Oh yeah, very, very important. So at Ubisoft, you had involvement with the Rainbow Six team. You said the Far Cry team. One of the examples that you have in your first book is talking about some user interface for Far Cry, and you show this really wonderful example of the skill tree, where I guess they first came to you with like a bunch of dots and then like arrows in between them.
So just to be sure, I did not work on that directly, but we had a lot of discussions, and so I was aware of this example.
But you influenced your input, probably influenced
I don't know. I chatted a lot with them, so I don't know. You should ask them. I know the work I did on Rainbow Six, Patriot, and the work I did on My Word Coach, and later on 1313 and Fortnite. But the rest was more like discussion. So I don't know.
Well, what I was getting to was you show this example of how rather than using these little dots, you use these teardrops, and the points of the teardrops essentially show the progression, right?
Yeah,
so A goes to B. Do you have it? I don't know. We don't have shared screen. Do you have
we don't? Okay.
No, we don't, sadly.
Okay.
But yeah, what you should do, or you in the audience, because I've watched Celia's talks and you show all these great visuals from these examples that are also in your book.
Pull out the book. I have the book.
You could pull out the book. Yeah, show us promote the book. But to just for the audience here, while Celia goes to get her book, it's this very elegant solution that
always a solution, it's a better experience.
Yeah, it's always, and I was kind of amazed that that it was such an elegant solution that I'm, there you mentioned something called hindsight bias, right? Oh, okay, so here we go. So yeah, there's this great image on the left. There's all these dots, and you can kind of see there's little tiny arrows. And then on the right, there are these teardrops, and they're showing, oh yeah, this is how the skill tree advances, right? And I thought that was such a clever solution. But you also talk about something called hindsight bias, right? This idea that, oh yeah, well, of course it's a great idea.
We
knew it all along, right? But I mean, what are some what are some things that we can do to help get over that hindsight bias, to be more present in this mindset, so we can come up with elegant solutions like that teardrop?
Have a UX mindset.
Have a UX mindset. Read your book, right? I guess that's the answer. Read your book. All right, fair enough.
Read the fucking manual. No, but I mean that's the thing. We are in our tunnel vision because it's I mean, it's hard, and we cling on to this wishful thinking that things are going to be okay, and there's things that we put in super fast, like, oh, we'll solve that later, and of course we never had the time, and so we end up with a bunch of clunky things. It's just tiny things, but if you add them up, at some point it's very confusing for the player. And so it's just by having this vision, and always putting the player at the center of what we do, like checking every now and then, okay, our assumptions are true or not, and not putting things in there that we like, oh yeah, I'll figure out later, because then we get used to it and then we forget that this is a problem.
Yeah, I see this with cameras and controls all the time, right? You're so busy going, woo, I am done with that. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And yeah, I think I call them designer blinders. Like they're like looking down a trench. Or the super nerdy analogy I use is that we're Luke Skywalker and we're flying down the trench, and all we can see is that little exhaust port right at the end of the thing that we want to shoot our torpedo in, and we are so focused that we don't see Darth Vader coming in behind us, right? And Darth Vader are bad things, they're problems, and so they're gonna kill us. Yeah, they're gonna shoot us, right? They're gonna metaphorically kill us if we're not if we don't pay attention. So what we need to also be is we have to remove the, like, Luke takes rid of that computer, but more importantly, we need to change our, and you mentioned this in your book also, the idea of what is called, and I love this term, the zoom in, zoom out mentality, which is we can also zoom out, and we should be Han Solo in the Millennium Falcon, because Han Solo can see the whole Death Star, and they can go, look, there's Luke and he's in the trench, and there's Darth Vader behind him, and that's going to be a problem for Luke. So let's shoot Darth Vader and let him fly away for the sequel, and then Luke can blow up the Death Star and everybody is happy, right?
That's a great example. So that zooming, zoom out philosophy is coming from Jean Guédon. He's the one who taught me that at Ubisoft. He's a creative director on the Assassin's Creed. And he does that, he tried to zoom in and then zoom out. And so he had these posters all the time that gets updated as the game is developing. But to have the whole team always keeping in mind the zoom out, because sometimes we get too much zoomed in on one tiny thing and we lose track of the big picture.
Yeah, literally the big picture. Yep. Yeah. So tell me more about these posters. What were on those posters that they keep reminding people? Oh, do you have one in your
no, I can't show you that, sadly. But
I thought you were gonna...
Yeah, I know it was Jean Guédon. I had a version of it that was that we could share, but I don't think I have one. But it was more like to see. So the version I did more at my work at Lucas with not at Lucas, at Epic with Darren Sugg, our creative director on Fortnite. He had these molecules, and so that's the same idea. Is that instead of really have a game document. It's just having on one poster you see the storyline, you would see the different weapons, you would see the progression of the player. For a game like Assassin's Creed, you have missions, and some missions advance the story. So it would be like all the things and how the main character is evolving. So you can see like the starting point, the ending point, and so it's very like visual way to see all the different things. So it looked a bit like that. So.
Yeah, it reminds me.
It helps a little bit to visualize it. It's I
get it. It's a bit like the beat charts that you often see in like if you're familiar with the Pixar movies, they have kind of the beat chart. They have like color charts, and they have things that you can visually see the story. I learned a technique from Mark Cerny, the creative director at Sony, and he would this was. We were kind of coming out of the era of game design documents, and nobody wanted to read a game design document. And so he showed me Japanese documents that he had kind of inherited from Sony Japan, and they were essentially like little cartoons and just showing how things worked and the relationship to each other, and drawing it out. And he would break everything down into like bullet points, and so it was very digestible. And that's how I picked up. That's where I learned that type of design nobody wants to read. That was the lesson that I very quickly learned. And so I said, well, if they're not going to read, at least they'll look at cartoons or something. And so I would make these little comic strips almost for them.
Yeah, it's really funny because we don't have enough of these techniques in the game industry. Like look at movies, we have storyboards.
Yep.
Like, no one is going to start shooting without the storyboard. That doesn't make any sense. So
right.
Especially
especially if you're doing something complicated or effects or something like that, right? Yeah. Well, that's great. So let's talk about LucasArts a little bit. You worked there on a couple of canceled games, the Star Wars 1313.
Oh God, yeah.
So and then another game that I'm not as familiar with called First Assault. What was First Assault?
That was a reboot for Battlefront.
Oh
It was not
man.
supposed to be announced, but it leaked, so now I can talk about it.
So now you can talk about it.
It was awful because, okay, so when Disney bought Lucas,
Right.
had that freeze at some point, and
Yeah.
no one gets hired, and like everything stops because we don't know what's gonna happen. That freeze happened the day before we were about to launch the beta on Xbox for first assault. And yeah, people are pissed about 1313, and I get it. I'm really sad about it because it was super cool, but it was super far away, like we were not even there. Battlefront, we were just about to launch the beta.
Yeah.
And like, are you kidding me? Like, it's tomorrow. I think it was something crazy, like it was a few hours. It's just, I'm like, anyway.
What a shame. So all right. So I want to ask, just
now I need boost. Thank you.
Sorry. Sometimes these get a little sentimental.
That's water, but anyway.
All right. You don't have to tell us that. It can be whatever. So just real quick, have you watched The Mandalorian? The TV show?
No, because okay, so it's still a bit bitter for me.
You're still bitter about it.
No, I'm not kidding.
Oh no, I get it. I worked for Disney. There's plenty of things I'm bitter about working from that. I was going to ask you because a lot of people have said that there's a lot of ideas that were from 1313 that ended up in The Mandalorian. Like people,
I would not be surprised.
Yeah. So I was just curious if you could confirm or deny that for our Star Wars fans in the audience.
At some point, I'm gonna watch it, but I don't know.
It's really good if you're a Star Wars fan and a Boba Fett fan. I highly recommend it. It's excellent.
No, I'm sure it's great. It's just I don't know. It's just like a
I get
thing I have to still work on.
to this day, my wife is still mad at Disney for laying me off. So it's I get it. All right. So, but there was an interesting UX story that you told about. Can you tell us the pizza radar story?
Oh shit! I don't have a marker. So I do. Well, it's not a marker, but it's gonna. So we were testing for the Battlefront thing, some icons, and I don't know if I can do that correctly, but the idea is to test, these icons instead of, making things like awkward.
Now, are these being tested in the game, or are they being tested in absentia of the game?
No, so they were, sorry, as I'm drawing, because we can't do two things at the same time. I can't really listen to you. So we were bringing people over, and they were testing like the prototype that we were having, and sometimes it was in game, and I don't remember for this one if it was paper or whatever. So it looked something like that. It was supposed to be a radar, so you would see like the cone of the radar and the three beeps like this that was supposed to represent people that you identify in the radar. And to everyone, it looked obvious. But the problem is that when we showed that to players, a bunch of them saw a pepperoni pizza. And that was not very on brand for Star Wars.
No pizza in Star Wars.
I don't know. I don't see Boba Fett like eating pizza.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he could reheat it. That's the cool thing with it.
That's true. Although I have to say, as a side note, the food that we've seen in Star Wars so far, most of it doesn't look very appetizing.
That is true. That is true. Maybe it's a blended pizza. Who knows?
Pizza flavored blue milk, right? Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was funny because we had like pepperoni pizza. I was like, yeah, okay, so we need to iterate on that.
We have to change something else. So what was the solution? Like, what did they end up changing it to help convey that?
Because we changed it a little bit. So I say we, but they added. I'm really bad at drawing. I don't actually remember how it looked like, but we added the lines.
On the actual radar scope.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Yeah. Concentric circles, right?
Yeah, and the circle was smaller, so now maybe it was olives, not pepperonis anymore.
I like both on my pizza. It's okay.
As long as not pineapple. I'm joking. I don't care. Put whatever you want on your pizza. I don't care. But
there's no pineapple. All right, we'll keep that in mind for the next time we get together. It's funny. Maybe I have Pac-Man on the brain, but your drawing looked like Pac-Man gargling to me.
Yeah.
He
Yeah,
was
that's
like,
because I'm a terrible drawer.
no, it's
That's
fine. We
another
got it.
problem.
We got it.
I was trying to remember how it looked like. This was a while ago that I haven't really drew it. So I was like,
Well, that's a really funny story. Thank you for sharing that. So are there any other interesting stories from your time at Lucas? So I don't want the heartbreaking ones, just the
No,
funny
but
ones.
my time as a kid was really super cool because
Yeah.
I was a fan of Star Wars. Like, oh my god, I was just like, and you were like casually see George Lucas like in the corridors, like, that's George. It's just amazing, and you go see all these movies before everybody, and we teach checks sound.
Yeah.
And it was just I loved the whole thing. And
Were
so the other
were
thing that's
you?
yeah.
I was gonna say, were you up at the
Presidio.
ranch? Oh, at the Presidio. Okay, yeah, that's a
I went
great
a
facility.
couple times at the ranch. So that was super cool, especially, because I love music and sound. So to me, it was like,
Oh yeah,
it was really, really awesome. But the cool stuff that we did at Lucas. So I introduced Piche Kuchas
yeah.
at LucasArts, and yeah, that's my thing. I just love to party. And, I pretend I'm good at UX, but it's just to have parties and make people laugh. That's my thing. But so we had Picha Kucha. So Picha Kucha is a presentation that has 20 slides, 20 seconds each. And that's a
Okay.
great way to share knowledge inside a company, because you do a Picha Kucha night, like once a month or whatever, and you just have 4 speakers, and it's gonna last not too long, and then people can talk about it. And because it's timed, it's not lasting forever. Because sometimes you say people 10 minutes, and then 30 minutes later they're still
Right.
here. So we would bring pizzas and beer and other, soft drinks for those who don't drink alcohol. And we were just having these Picha Kucha nights, and that was really fun. That was super cool.
What were some of the topics that people presented?
Oh gosh, many topics. So sometimes it was just this is what we try to solve on this game, or sometimes like this is what I love video games, or sometimes it was just like, hey, this is so I remember one from one of the musicians at Lucas, well, maybe because I'm biased. He was talking about what make earworms in music,
Oh,
and he
right.
was
Yeah.
talking about what's the song, all the other kids with the
Oh,
pumped up kicks, you better run. So it was showing like all the stuff, and for this song, I remember that picture very well because it's music. So
yeah.
to me, it's
Yeah.
more memorable. Foster the
And you
people.
got that.
Thanks.
And you got that earworm stuck in your ear, and
Yeah,
now
and
you
then you're
can't.
like, "Fuck you!" Why are you doing this to us? And then we had that song the whole night. So that
The
was cool.
people in the audience are writing "Foster the People."
Yeah,
So is
Foster the
Foster the
People.
band?
That's the band. That's
Oh,
the
that's
band.
the band. Okay, all right.
Pumped up kicks is the song.
Pumped Up Kicks is the song,
Yes,
right? Yeah,
and
I know the song, but
Jesse Harling is the musician who did that Picha Kucha. That was cool.
Nice. That's very cool. So that,
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
that
a
sounds
super
like,
morbid song. That's the thing. It's like people like listen to it. It's like, oh yeah, it's super cool. And you have it in your room. It's talking about mass shooting. It's super
oh,
depressing. But
right,
people, when you just like hear about it, like, oh yeah, that sounds cool.
right. I mean, that's that idea, those little, mini lecture format, right? And then socialize with the beer and the pizza and whatnot. It sounds like a really great way to team build, right? Like that seems like a very interesting method. Is that something that you also help with when you're talking to? I mean, it's not just the user experience, right? Communicating the designer's ideas to the player, but then do you address, hey, the communication within the organization? Is that something you help with?
I wouldn't say I was addressing it, but I I always understood that all the things that we do to make games better for players, like all the things about intrinsic motivation, like make them feel competence, autonomy, relatedness, teams need to feel that too.
Right.
We're all humans, and communication breakdown is one of the first thing that happens in when we do anything, and even more so a game, because there's so many people with different backgrounds, and sometimes it's across different studios and even countries. And so
Yeah.
having that communication flow it's really tough. And so I always love to do that. And I love to connect people. That's my thing. I was called a Miss Network, but it was at Ubisoft. I just love to connect people and just have fun, because this is when we can, just talk human to human and not just about the problems that we have. And I also did that at Epic. Like we built the playtest lab there, and so it's soundproof. There's a section that's
Oh,
soundproof.
it looks like a fantastic facility. You have pictures of it in your book,
Mm-hmm.
and I was jealous because I've worked at companies that like the playtest room is like a abandoned conference room. That's like
Well, that was the case
like
at
the best
Lucas.
thing.
It was a bit sad, but at Epic, we had the room, and so we could just like build a whole thing. And I was like, oh, cool! And I get to design the. It was really cool. And then the secret room, like where we actually need soundproofed. We added some cool lights.
Oh, nice.
Rex Stover was working with me at that time. Like he bought some awesome lights, like the ones I have here. Like you can change the colors, and so it was really cozy. And we had booze for those who want to have booze, and soft drinks for the others. We had tissues there, and once you can see, it's it's pretty depressing to watch players sometimes. Like it's not
Sometimes,
working.
yeah.
Oftentimes. But once a month, again, that room, instead of being a room of pain for the game developers, was a room of fun. We just put the music on and
Oh,
have
that's
people
great.
come in, and we just chat and have a nice time and just enjoy. And sometimes, there were some fun times that in this room. There was sometimes a bit nuts, but that was in a good way, very, very fun. And we're just like dancing and shouting, and so that's cool.
That's awesome.
That's the only
So,
thing I care about, that all the rest is just to pretend I know what I'm doing.
it's just in support of that lifestyle. Well, I mean, so I've been lucky enough to work for a few places that do have something like that. Not as fancy with the lighting as the Epic one was.
Not that fancy.
Hey man, you'd be surprised.
It costs nothing. You just
I know,
it's really cool.
You'd be surprised at how much effort it is for some people to do something like that, right? But let me ask you I think it's a wonderful idea. I think that it's almost a necessity for anybody who is, serious about being able to play test their game and get this important feedback. And I myself, I used to love going to the play test. I would also be the one with the tissue. Why don't they play my game right? But that said, I also became a convert to that mentality that testing is valuable and it's important and it's even necessary. So if, let's say, I wanted to build a facility like that for my team, for my company, what would you like? What are the must-have things that need to be in something like that?
Oh boy. So typically when you want to have these two rooms, one room where the player is going to be and one room we can observe them. You can have the second room in a different place. But I really love the fact when you really behind the players, because it has a proximity that I think makes it more tangible.
Right.
Rather than seeing just the screens projected in another room. So that's my ideal thing, but there's many ways to do it. But I like to have the overhead screens above the player's head. So the players, they have their booth, and it's really important in the player's side that it's professional and neutral. So you don't want to have posters of cool games, and you don't want to have a t-shirt of cool games. You want the people, the moderators that are taking care of the players to be super professional, not being like, yeah, high five, because you want to keep the thing like, hey, we're doing science here. You don't want to be super, of course you want to be nice to them, but you don't want to be friends to them, because you want to make sure they're going to stay focused on the game and not going to try to please you as a moderator. So the part of the game has to be as neutral as possible. Then the part where we watch has to be as cozy as possible, like big windows so you can watch, have like a nice sound so you can hear what's going on in the room and clearly see what they do. So they play on their little booth, and you want to make sure that they don't see each other as well, because sometimes they don't know what to do. So you're going to check out what the other is doing. So you want to make sure that they feel that they're alone, even though they know they're not. So they just play the game on their booth, and then above you would see what the gameplay, what they're doing. You would maybe have an eye tracking point, so you can follow where they're looking at, and stuff like time code, and sometimes you can have like a feedback on the, if they're on PC or if with the controller, what are they pressing, what button they're pressing.
Yeah, reading the keystrokes.
Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much it. You need to have good IT help,
of course,
for setting all that up, because it's sometimes a bit complicated. And the thing that you want to make sure is that it's secure, because sometimes the teams are a bit worried to show a game that is in development and not announced. So you want to make sure that everything, that it never happened to me. I had never had any leak in a playtest, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. And you want to make sure that you have that trust relationship, and you absolutely don't want that to happen. So we had, for example, a metal detector to make sure that people were not introducing anything to capture what was going on. And to me, it sounds crazy, but also to make sure that people were not bringing guns in, because open carry, even that concealed carry. To me, like as a French person, I'm like, what do you mean you want to make sure they don't bring guns in? But yeah, that was the thing. We had a couple players, like they came in with their guns, and like,
what?
Yeah.
In California?
No, in North Carolina.
Oh, North Carolina. Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's North Carolina. No, I'm kidding.
So, I mean, it's good, it's good for both of these things. Make sure that they don't bring in, phone or whatever, like to take pictures or whatnot. And so that's the security part is really, really important.
Is there an optimal number of players to run these tests with at a time?
It depends on the game, depends on the stage of the game, depends on your test. So sometimes it would just bring one person if we want to have like what we call a cognitive walkthrough. So when people are talking through the experience, so they think out loud. So you can only have one person at a time. So that's useful if you test a new feature, like a prototype or an onboarding, and you want to understand how, what they understand. Or it could be up to 10 people if you have a multiplayer game and it plays 5v5. So you need at least 10 people
well,
to do that. But it's rarely above that at the same time, just because it's very, it takes a lot of time to recruit players. And so we just focus on the things that we can test with a small amount of people, and then later on we can verify things with telemetry and data analysis.
Yeah, I always found the player selection process to be fascinating too, right? Where you really can narrow it down to ethnicity and age. And, well, it's interesting when the person running the test is like, oh, here's this sector, here's some things we can find out that we might not get from this other type of player, right? So that to me, I think it can be interesting.
It's never really this granular. It's more about the expertise that players have. So if it's super early and might be super rough around the edges, typically we want more hardcore gamers, because it's easier for them, because they're so familiar with the game, to get over the roughness of the game. And it depends on the type of games, but it's really more about the expertise and what sort of games they play than anything else. In my experience, it's really that what matters. Because if you make a game, let's say you make a game like Fortnite, so you're going to have building in there. All right, what are the other games that have building? Minecraft. All right, so we need players who have played Minecraft, and maybe players who have never played Minecraft, so we can see, how difficult it is to get an knack of building. So that's the sort of thinking that we do. It's more about what are you familiar with, rather than anything else. Age, because of course, you don't want to bring in minors, or it's complicated because you have to have a parent's authorization. So it's really rare when we do that. But beyond that, it's really more about how often do you play and what type of games you play.
Right. And that familiarity with the type of game, so that way you can sometimes get that compare and contrast information. Right. I play Minecraft and my game is like Minecraft. What do you like more? The stuff, the building in Minecraft or the building in this game, or that kind of thing?
And playtesters have to be careful with opinions like that because we don't
Okay.
have enough. It's not a big sample enough to be able to really get any useful insights from that. So it's more
Right.
like if you play Minecraft and you're used to Minecraft, what do you understand from the interface or the interaction design in this other game that also has building? So it's
Right.
more about this. It's more about cognitive processes and can people understand what they perceive rather than asking them opinions. We can always ask them opinions, but we don't really take that at face value because it's
Right.
not a sample that's big enough for that.
It's not scientific enough. Obviously, you're the scientist. I am not. I'm asking opinions. All right. So at Epic, you were the director of user experience, and you developed UX practices and strategies on a little game called Fortnite. You said that Fortnite works because it has the right user experience ingredients. So what were some of those ingredients?
I might be a bit biased here.
Well, okay, but that's fine. I mean, but what was it like? What was it about those ingredients and how they combined? Do you like where, what can you pin to say, look, we did this, or this thing was done right. This is why this game did so well.
Yeah. So the reason why I mentioned this is because a lot of people, people from outside the game industry, more likely, ask me, "What's the recipe? How do you make a successful game?" I'm like, there's no recipe. If there was a recipe, then we'd be in the sad place because all the games would look the same. But what we have is ingredients, and so in my practice, I really try to break it down and to make it usable for the game developers so they could get empowered and have this checklist that we were talking about, because we forget, and when we're really into the tunnel, we just the pressure, this is when we forget about all these things and we just go with the flow. And so these ingredients is just about usability and engageability. So usability is just things like, can people understand the signs and feedback in the game? Can they know what's going on, and is that enemy an enemy, or is it friendly, or very basic stuff like that. But we need to have all the list of all the signs and feedback to guide players. And then it needs to be clear. We need to minimize the workload, like making sure, for example, that we don't ask players to memorize too many things at the same time, or not to process too many things at the same time. Flexibility, accessibility, all these things are really, really important. So that's the usability part, making sure that we remove all the frictions that are not by design. Of course, we are putting frictions in there. It's a game. But the frictions that are not by design, we remove them. Like if an icon looks like a pepperoni pizza, that's a friction that is not by design. That's an example in the UI, but there are many, many more examples for everything, like sound design, environment design, level design, everything. And then it's not because the game is usable that it's going to be fun. Right. That's the twist.
This is the thing that I was really interested. I wanted to find out about, and that is that term that you use, engageability.
Yeah.
So we here at NYFA, we talk a lot about the idea of flow, right? Like that Cheech sent me high. We want to stay in that zone and we want flow. So tell us, what is the difference between that traditional flow state that we, that chart that we look at, right? The keep them in the flow channel versus what you're talking about with engageability, because I love this idea.
Well, thanks. I'm glad, because it took me a while to formalize that as well, because I used to talk about game flow. I used to talk about usability and game flow. But then I found out, sure, game flow is important, but it's more either like the end effect, or it's part of the whole thing, because in the end, what's important is for players to have fun. And what does it mean to have fun? So I'm also a fan of the theory of fun and Ralph Koester and what he's writing. But what I found challenging when I was working with the game developers is like everybody has their own idea of what fun is. And so as soon as you say fun, then everybody have their thing. And then it's hard to actually really talk about things objectively, because everybody think about the thing that they care about. And that's the reason why I was like, fun, like what makes things fun is not going to work out.
Fun is a terrible metric. I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
It's just not, it's too opinionated. It just doesn't help.
It is. It's really hard to work with it. So game flow was too narrow, not narrow in the sense that it's not important, but narrow in terms of, what gets to the flow from the theory. And then fun was too broad. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to call that engageability. I don't care. It sounds pompous as well, but it's a nice balanced with usability. So
Right,
usability, we care about the ability of the game to be used. Engageability is about the ability of the game to be engaging. And this is actually what we measure when we have the KPIs of retention rate. That's a measure of engageability. Are people engaged enough that they come back? And so that's the reason why I started to use that term. And then I was like, game flow is definitely part of the ingredients that we need. And then you have emotion. And the first thing is that we care about the most is motivation, because there is no behavior without motivation. And so we need to understand human motivation, and emotion and game flow are here to support that, and they feed on each other. And so this is how I came up with this. Take it with a grain of salt, and like usability.
I love it. No, I love it. And with your permission, I'm going to start using that, because I feel the same way. I feel that flow is this almost like it's more for the user and not for the creator. And fun is, my students, there's some in the audience, they will attest how much I hate the word fun. And so I always say, I don't want to hear you use the word fun. But I've never found the right word to use. So when I read that, I was like, oh, this is it. I found the vocabulary word that I've been looking for. So
Yay!
Thank you. I think it's great.
That's awesome. And my job is done. Thanks. No, that's amazing, because I was, it's hard to find the right terms, and that's my whole thing.
Absolutely.
I want to have the vocabulary that can be shared by everyone, and then we can all focus on what does that mean, because as soon as you can say, well, I have a problem in my game and the players are pissed because A, B, or C, the whole point of this is to figure out why, and then we can talk about it if we have the terms. Then maybe it's not working because players don't understand what killed them, and so they lack a feeling of competence. If you don't feel competent, that you cannot be intrinsically motivated into doing this activity, and therefore this tiny thing maybe in the UI or in the character design or the environment design is having a big impact and ripple effect with people. How do they gonna feel competent or not? If they don't feel competent, this is when they rage quit. And so this is really helping to identify problems instead of being like, oh, fuck, shit's on fire. How do we start? It's just a helpful way. I did not reinvent the wheel. I just tried to make things more easy to communicate with one another. That is
definitely a skill. So let me ask you then, what about the engageability of Fortnite made it work? Like, what was the thing that was, or I'm sure it was a combination of things, obviously, because engageability is a combination of concepts. But like, in your opinion, what were a few of the things that you're like, this is why it's doing so well?
Yeah. So the ingredients is just the framework. Then what you need to have is the mindset. And so the Fortnite had the mindset, and they were always thinking about, okay, so for example, they wanted to add a feature. Okay, does that gonna make sense? Or we're gonna make a multiplayer mode. Would it make sense to not have building in there? Well, no, if you make a game with building, and building is one of the pillars, then we have to be all in. Otherwise, it looks like a patchwork. It doesn't make any sense. So these are the sort of mentality you have to have. Like, first of all, define the experience that you want to offer. What are your pillars? Why are they important for the players? I always start with why. That's also something I use a lot, like from Simon Sinek. Like he always says, like, start with why. This is the thing. We have a tendency to focus on the what's, whatever the shit we're going to add, or the features we're going to add, but why does that matter? So always like going back to the why, and that's it's happening for prioritization. And then always keep the player at the center. Okay, we have a new system. Let's prototype it. Bring people in, test it. Okay, they got this, didn't get that. All right, let's do another prototype. We retest, it's getting better. Okay, now we implement. So it's always more about the mindset that's really placing the player at the center, that really helped us to solve these really complex problems with Fortnite, especially Save the World, because it's like RPG with all the different systems. And then I was like, oh my God, like people are not getting, that you're developing your home base, and how do you augment your stats in your home base, and no one was getting that. It's like, okay, how are you going to convey all these information to players? Because if they don't get it, they're not going to feel competent. And so that's the mindset. And the framework, the ingredients, just helping you understand where are the problems and help you prioritize, because there's just hundreds of things that is not working. And so where do you start?
Right. Try to reduce that cognitive load for the players, break things down.
For the game developers as well.
For the game developers as well. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Yeah. I mean, it can get overwhelming. You have so many systems and so many gameplay features and so many, variables. I mean, heck, the number of
fires to extinguish,
Yeah, fires to extinguish, and even things like dance moves. How many of those we're going to get in? Right? There's just so many things.
Yeah, so that's the thing. That's a great example. Like dance moves. Should we put effort, from animators, from artists to have dance moves? So now, if you have the framework, well, dance moves are important because of autonomy. And Fortnite is a third-person camera game, and it's a multiplayer game. So it turns out it's going to be even more important for players to have different skins and dance moves. That's going to make it really, really cool for players because it's really all the stars align for that. Now, if you have a game that's first person, then maybe
you're not going to see that.
It's not. Yeah, it's not going to be as interesting, or if it's not multiplayer.
Which is why, one of the games that I love to play is Team Fortress 2. Mm-hmm. And I always thought it was really funny that the cosmetics, you spend all this, you can spend money and you can spend time and making your character look a certain way, and you almost never see them in the game. Right? Like if you do a taunt or you get killed, you see it. Yeah. But other than that, you never see it. And on one hand, I'm like, is that dumb or is that genius? I don't know,
So this is when we don't know, but at least we try to put the efforts where it's gonna, have the biggest bang for your buck. And a game that really does that very well is Overwatch. They're also in first-person camera, but anytime you do an emote, you shift into
it zooms out, right? Yeah.
So that's a smart way to do that.
Right. And it's a good way to show off the character's personality, which allows you to empathize more with them and feel like I am playing, and when you play different characters, now you're, this guy feels one way, this gal feels a different way. And it's great. Overwatch, I think also, all three of those games, Fortnite and Team Fortress and Overwatch, have really done a little bit of a magic trick, because I remember when a first person shooter didn't have personality. Right. The closest you had was Duke Nukem, and the personality was like sketchy at best. But like otherwise,
it had a pretty heavy personality, I would say.
Well, yeah, that's true. It was a very overbearing personality. But to be, have certain characters that now, like, when I play Overwatch, there's certain characters I like, and part of it is just because I like their personalities. I like the way they act and they look and they move and things like that. And I think
just like to shoot people in the face.
Well, I like to light them on fire. That's my favorite. But yes, it's just, for me, it's been really fun to see that genre in particular evolve so much. Think of Wolfenstein 3D. What you could do with that, and now look where we're at. Right. It's amazing. All right. So let's talk a little bit about your books. First of all, everybody should read them. The Gamer's Brain: How Neuroscience and User Experience Can Impact Video Game Design. It's, to be honest, not only, engageability was amazing and so many fun illustrations showing off the concepts, but also I think just for the onboarding plan outline that you have in there, it's worth buying. Like that little chart right there, I'm like, oh, I'm using this. It is fantastic.
That was something I formalized with Fortnite. And that really, I feel that it helped us a lot. It was really great. It was really great. So it's complicated because, especially for a game like that, you end up with a very big. I'm trying to find the page where this is.
Yeah, I don't even know if we'll be able to see it. It's got tiny print on it.
Yeah, I know. But it's really cool because you list all the things that players are going to have to learn. And then you try to figure out what are the things that are most important for them, because if they don't know about something, for example, they're really not going to be able to play at all. So I know it's super small, I'm sorry, but it's just to show you how it looks like.
Well, what I liked about it is it reminded, there's the concept of ramping, right? Like this idea of ramping the game, and the priority is shifting over the course of the game as, either you're learning how to use a new weapon, or you're learning how to fight a new type of enemy, or you're dealing with a new environment. And I thought that the outline that you presented there was a really neat visual representation to help. Once again, it's that cognitive load, right? There's so much going on in the game, and breaking it into those little chunks of, all right, here are these subjects, here is this. I thought that was a really helpful tool for game developers.
Yeah, no, I really love it. And it's really helping anticipate problems. We can also make our hypothesis much better. And if we test, we know at that point in the game, players should know this. And so we can test them. We can ask them, okay, what is this? And if they don't know it by then, that's a problem. But sometimes it's not a problem if players don't know about something until much later, and that's okay.
Right.
We can't learn everything at the same time. So it's really helping us prioritize all the things and try to anticipate what's going to be difficult for players to learn and what's going to be more easier. Depending, it's a shooter game and we target shooter players like that, how to aim and shoot. So we should not spend too much effort into making a very big, complicated tutorial about shooting and the boot camp or whatever. Like I see a lot of FPS games do that.
Oh, doing that, right? Yeah. This is how you pull the trigger, and come on. I've already played dozens of these things. Just let me kill stuff. The other thing I found very gratifying when reading The Gamer's Brain was your validation of the idea of diegetic interface, which you use the Dead Space example, which I love that game. I think that's brilliant. Yeah. But when we were doing Maximo, that was like something that I really pushed for. I was like, the armor on the character, it's like Ghosts and Goblins, right? And so when you get hit, the armor comes off. If you get the armor back, you come back on. But even in that game, one of the things I insisted on was if you had keys, rather than putting in the interface, you just had them on your belt. So you could look and go, oh, do I have a key? Yeah, they're on my belt. Okay, I can keep going, right? So it was, I read these books for validation of
for your confirmation bias. I see.
Confirmation bias, right? Exactly. Yeah, no, I thought that was a really interesting part of the book as well.
Yeah,
talking about that
UI, it's super cool, but it's super hard to do.
It requires a lot of planning ahead, right? Like you're thinking about, all right, we've got to have all these elements live together, them not sort through each other, them, how are they going to look, the design, now you're asking, because normally most concept designers are just like, make it look cool. But now if you're going to them and saying, well, not only do you have to make it cool, but it has to function, then they're like, well, but I can't make it look cool if it's got to function, and so.
Yeah. And whenever you have to iterate on it, then that's a whole new story.
It's much rebuild the character, rebuild the character.
Yeah. And it's fine if you have one character or if it's consistent, but if you have a game with different characters, oftentimes they don't have the same shape, and so then it's getting really challenging to make it work across all characters or guns. Like oftentimes we had a diegetic UI like in Halo, like on the gun you see it, but then if you have another gun, that doesn't always work. So that's the reason why we still have the weapon HUD on the corner, because it's still helping.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great observation. All right. So what I want to do, sorry, I was typing.
See, you were typing at the same time. Yeah, we can't multitask. I know.
You're right. You caught me. So what I did was you caught me. I was typing to the audience, and I wanted to ask them, if you have any questions for Celia, go ahead and post them in the chat, and I would love to ask them, because I want to give everybody a chance to ask you. You have so much knowledge about user experience and the psychology of games. And while I'm waiting for some questions, tell us a little bit about your latest book, The Psychology of Gaming. What can the reader expect? Why should they read it? Why should we all run out and buy it right now?
That's more for the game developers or gamers to buy for their friends or for their family that always telling them, I stop playing these stupid games, because this is a very small book, very short. And this is really to explain how games are made, how psychology is used to make these games. So it's really very entry level about what UX is about. So that's the first part of the book. And the second part is explaining what are the potential positive and negative impact of playing video games on players with science in it, and not just the fear mongering, moral panic that we see a lot. So it's looking at digesting on all the research and saying, well, this is what we know so far, and this we're not sure. And so it's really helping go beyond and just maybe hopefully have a much a nuanced public discourse. So it's more a book. If you're a game developer, it's not really a book that's going to be interesting to you, because you should know all of this, unless you need to have bullets, ammunition to reply to people constantly saying that video games turn kids addicted or they make people violent. So it's breaking down all the research and also showing how video games can also have a positive impact, although it's not either going to change the world, save the world, because sometimes, we have in the game industry, like, we're like, yeah, video games is just like the best thing ever. It's going to save everything, like solve, the problems of climate change. Like, maybe you're going too far. And then the other side of that, like it's the devil. Like, okay, right. Maybe, someplace in the middle.
There's somewhere in between. So what you're saying is that we should all buy multiple copies of this book, so that way we can hand them out to like our parents and our in-laws and our pastor or whatever, all these people that are not quite sure about our gaming, our love for gaming.
Yeah,
right?
it's a short book, so it's more. Yeah, it's just I'm so tired to hear all these things, and it's not even helping us to really solve for the real problems. That to me, we do have some responsibilities we need to face around ethics and about inclusion, about accessibility, and around the attention economy. There are things that we should look into, and we're not, because there's all that fluff around. And of course, when people come to us and say, "Well, you're making kids addicted," you're like, no, like, we love what we do. We're passionate about what we do. It's just art, just like movies. So what are you talking about? So that makes the dialogue really complicated.
There's very few insidious characters in the game industry, other than Peter Molyneux. No, I'm kidding. So, all right. No, I love you, Peter. So, all right. So I got some questions here. So I'm sorry if I butcher your names in advance. So this is from, it's Tanay Sharma. Tanay asks, loads of love from India. So we have a viewer from India. That's awesome. Thanks for joining us. For students who graduated in 2020, parentheses, yikes, any advice, any advice for people getting into user experience for games remotely? And they add, P.S. I have a bachelor's in design. So maybe that will be a good head start, I hope.
Yes. So I was about to say, well, I have the perfect article that I can post in there. I'm still going to post it so people can take a look, because I wrote that during the pandemic, a post to help people get in the game industry. But remotely, it's make it easier and more complicated at the same time. It's more easier because now people know that we can work remotely, and that's not a big deal, because sometimes you had to relocate and it was very complicated. Now it's a bit easier in that sense, but as you start, I can't even imagine how I would just be able to learn that vocabulary from everyone without the part that I really love the most, the beer and the moments where you just like have fun. So it's hard. I'm sorry, I really don't have an answer for that. But a lot of people are super nice, and they're on Discord, on Slack. There's a lot of conferences now happening online, so that makes that easier. Like, I do much more stuff with students, because I don't have to fly everywhere every time I do that, and now everybody's on Zoom, and that's no big deal. So this is what I would recommend, to try to join the fun. Apparently there's a lot of game developers on Clubhouse today, so I need to I'm in there, but I need to find time to chat in there.
You and me both.
There's a lot of platforms. Huh?
Yeah, I said you and me both. Get into Clubhouse.
Yeah, you are right. We should chat over there, because I haven't haven't started chatting over there. But the other thing, and Twitter and Twitch and
everywhere, right? Pick a format. The other thing I wanted to bring up is that you're involved with the UX group on GDC, right? You're a part of that group. So maybe if you are, now I know students often can get access to GDC, right? I mean, in the old days, you'd had to volunteer at the show and all that. But do you know if there's any sort of way that young, either people from countries that aren't usually served by the gaming industry or whatever. I'm sure maybe there's opportunity for the students and potential game creators to join in the fun at the GDC UX conference.
Yeah, so we have the GDC UX Summit, which kicked off in 2017. I want to say 2016, I think. That was super cool, and it happened because I launched at Epic with the Epic folks, the Game UX Summit, and it was the first time like we had like a big conference to talk about all things UX, not just user research or not just design. It was just like all the things like this UX approach that everybody's concerned about. And that community, the game UX community, is very welcoming, very inclusive. I would say that's, again, I'm biased, but I would say it's the most inclusive group in the game industry. And you have lovely people. So on my website, and the resources section, you have all the links to the Discord channels, to the different LinkedIn groups, to the grox.org organization. It's a game research and user experience. It's from a GDA group. And you can go to the GDC UX Summit, but it is a bit expensive, although all the videos are posted online. And you'll also find on my YouTube channel a bunch of these videos. So sometimes, I forget to add them, but you will see on the playlist a bunch of videos around game user experience, and you can join the game UX community fairly easily and come see the game UX Summit. We do this online, like we did it online last year. December was just $5 just to pay for the closed captioning, and so that was, I loved it. So there are more actually ways to get in today, but it's a bit different because it's just harder to start in a job. It's easier, I would say, it's easier to connect because I love parties, but I would need to recognize that there are some parties you don't want to be at because of harassment and all, people drunk. And sometimes, I find it fun because I'm with my friends and I know everybody's respectful, and hopefully, like, so far I didn't had any problems or I'm not aware of. But it can be problematic. Like, you're young and you get in the industry, you go to the parties, especially at GDC, tons of parties, and then you don't have a great experience, and then you just like meet an asshole who's going to be harassing you, and then that's not great. So at least we don't have that, and just by meeting online, I think it makes it safer, more welcoming, and more accessible. But then to start a job, it's complicated. That's the thing.
Well, it seems like, though, the UX Summit is a good place to start, at least.
I mean, like the grox.org is a great place to start as well. The Discord channels, like, go there. It's on my website. You'll find all the links there.
There you go. Go to the website. That's the answer. All right. So we have a question from John, who asks, in the new age of mobile gaming, although I don't know how new it is anymore, right? It's getting a little older. Yeah. The eventuality that led to an industry of freemium and free-to-play models, what, in your experience in user interface and user experience, is the key differentiator in recognizing predatory or nefarious models versus a game that's not?
Yeah, that's a great question.
It is a great question.
It is a difficult. Well, I mean, there's the good thing about free-to-play games is that anyone can play. So it's not, you're not gated by your wallet. But the not good thing about it is sometimes there are some practices that are not great. So you want to look into, is it a win-win situation? That's always the thing I'm trying to find out. Is it something that, like loot boxes, for example? Is it like the case when you still have a lot of ways to get loot boxes without paying, and you see that the company is generous with it, and in the loot boxes, there's just cosmetics, there's nothing that's going to be useful for gameplay? Then we can say, okay, that sounds good. Or is it loot boxes where it's actually pretty hard to get what you need? You really need to put money in it, and it's really gameplay related. So if you don't get the thing that is really good, it's going to affect your gameplay. So that's the sort of thing. It's hard to say loot box is bad and this is good. Overall, loot boxes is challenging. I think it's hard to really get it right. But then you have stuff like FOMO. Sometimes like with seasons. Now you don't have loot boxes, but you have season, and let's say it's a season of let's say 30 days to make it simpler. And if you want to have the great reward, you need to connect every day to get it on the 30th day. And so it really means that if you don't connect one day, you're screwed, and so you're never going to get it. Or
Right.
it takes so much time to get it that it's not necessarily on the 30th day or whatever, but if you don't pay, you really have to play every day for 4 hours or more to be able to get it. That's a bit too much. It could be, well, you have to play for it, you have to earn it, whatever. If you don't want to pay for it, fine. But it's more about the amount of pressure that we put on players, and is there some generosity around it, or is it really we put some pressure so that if they want it, they're either going to have to play for super, super long, or they're going to have to pay. So
Right.
it's more around this.
My personal rule of thumb is don't be abusive with it, right? Like as long as it's not. So, but once again, if you're making money off of it, then you're like, like you say, now I'm profiting from this, and this is, or even worse, where sometimes the developers will say, all of our revenue stream is going to come from this, and so we're going to try to squeeze as much money out of the player as we can, right?
Yeah. So do you have a business mindset, or do you have a UX mindset? If you have a business mindset, it's business first. If you have a UX mindset, well, we need to consider business. I mean, yes, it's art and we're passionate about it, but we still need to eat and to pay our rent. So we still need to make some money, and that makes sense. I mean, it doesn't make sense to work for free. But is it a win-win situation? Or is it business first, and we're just gonna milk the cow as much as we can?
Squeeze the whale.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know why Zoom added the space. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to have a space, but we started a initiative called ethicalgames.org to try to define where's the line, instead of having that rule of thumb that everybody has their cursor somewhere and we don't really know where. The idea is to try to define where are the lines, so that we can have better practices in the game industry overall.
Nice. That's great.
It's going to take time, but we need to start somewhere.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's baby steps, but you'd think we'd be further along by now, but it's better. As somebody who's been doing this for a while, it's better than it was, and it's starting to get even better. So it's getting there. All right. Mai has a question for game user experience positions. What are some red flags for job posting requirements to watch out for?
UX/UI. They all do that. So I'm sorry. It's not really a good red flag. So sometimes you see a job position and they don't really know what they're talking about, where they ask UX/UI and then say, okay, so what am I doing? The UX design, or am I doing the visuals? Because it's two different things, and it's hard to actually be really good at both. So that would be some flags. But then, sometimes it's just because that's the vocabulary that we use. So flags would be, do people really understand what UX is about? Because right now it's trendy, which is great. I love that it's trendy, but now we have a lot of misconception around it. That one is just about the UI. And so try to figure out what the company understands about UX. Or is it just, lip service? And who in the company is having a UX in their title? And do they really have background in either UX design, so interaction design, information architecture, that sort of things? Do they talk about human-computer interaction principles, that sort of cool things? I found that cool. Or are they just like ended up there without, just because UX is a thing now, and they don't necessarily have, and again, this is not about being snobbish. It's precise, and interaction design is coming from human computer interaction, and there are principles that we apply that are coming from cognitive science, and so that's the whole point. So you can learn that by yourself. I'm not saying you need a PhD to do that, absolutely not, but you need to have at least the practice, or understand these things, and you should be able to talk about those principles. So if you're hired in a company and they have no idea of any of that, that would be a flag.
Right. Yeah. Make sure they're following the science.
A little bit. I mean,
A little bit.
yeah, because otherwise, we just like follow our intuition, and then we don't need ex-professionals to do that.
Absolutely. Anybody can ask those questions. Jason has a good question, which is, what are your thoughts on season passes? Do you think it can be implemented better in terms of disclosing what you're getting up front before purchasing?
Yeah, so when they became popular, I actually thought that was a good alternative to loot boxes because it was more open and maybe more generous. But then the things that I just described earlier, then you see the pressure and these events. And if you are not part of the cool stuff that's happened at that moment, that this is never going to happen again, and never going to have this reward again. So now as adults, that can be okay maybe, but for teenagers and kids, but teenagers more specifically, I would say, well, kids as well. But I mean, a game, if we talk about Fortnite, for example, it's supposed to be 13 plus. So it's teenagers. They care a lot about being in a group and be part of the group. And that's something that's really strong in teenagers. And so at my time, you need to have the sneakers of the cool brand. Otherwise, people would not talk to you. We're not cool enough. Today, I don't give a shit. But, back then, it was important to be part of a group, to have the cool, the signals, and you can signify, hey, I'm from that group. Today, in a game like Fortnite and other games, goes a lot through skins. So if you don't have, like, a lot of people are saying you're a default, for example, that's an insult. You have a default skin, and that became an insult. And so for teenagers, it's actually hard to handle that sort of emotions. And so for them, it's really even more so of a pressure to get the skins. And so I would say that would be the problems around seasons in general. That you have the season like Marvel or whatever, you want to be part of the gang, and so if you are not putting all the hours in or spending money in to get the skin or the dance move that you need, that it's a lot of pressure for teenagers.
Yeah, everybody wants the new exciting hotness, but once again,
it's fear of missing out, and use that. I mean, it's why not? I mean, if it's not, again, it's not too much pressure. It's cool to have events, but again, have events that happen a few times. It's not just that one day they have to be there. I think it's just more in these nuances, but also it has to do with the population playing, again, something that adults can manage okay-ish. It's going to be much harder for teenager too. That there's a good reason why some things are not allowed until you're 18 or 21, because it's just harder to control yourself, because your prefrontal cortex, which is that part of the brain, is the part that's really managing your impulsions and to control yourself better. It's getting mature until 20 to 25 years of age.
Right. Well, there's hope for us yet.
I don't know. It's not to say that adults are completely mature. I mean, like adults are still like doing like crap and drinking too much or watching like Game of Thrones too long or whatever. So it's just harder if your prefrontal cortex is not mature. Just harder to control.
Right. All right. Well, thank you everybody for the fantastic questions. And thank you. I have one last question, and my question is, what is next for Celia Hodent?
Gosh, you're asking me this in 2021? I don't know. Just survive the pandemic would be good.
Survive, right?
No. So what's next? Okay, so I'm working with Catherine Nesbister on the second edition of Game Usability. So that's going to be super cool. I'm going to have lots of new chapters. So I can't wait to have that out. I'm working on a small book, just like the Psychology of Video Games, but to explain what the hell UX is all about. So it's going to be, again, a very small book to help people understand that, no, this is not UI, and no, I'm not here to design for you. So just things like that. At some point, I'm going to work on the Gamer's Brain second edition. I am working at some point also. I hope I can move forward with the ethicalgames.org initiative. It's a bit complicated because I want it to be grounded in science. And right now, researchers with the COVID situation, is really hard for them because researchers are oftentimes teachers. And so right now it's really, really tough. So I'm not moving forward as fast as I wanted to. So hopefully We can
I'm
get
sure.
that done at some point, but it's gonna take more time than I thought.
Right. Everybody understands, right? It's everything is taking longer for everybody. So, but those are great.
It's tough. Well, and there's also inclusion, like working towards more inclusion, and help people understand their biases so that we can hire and be more inclusive in the game industry. We still have a long road ahead. So
That's right.
I hope I can
hope
help move the needle a little bit.
Exactly. If we work together, maybe we'll get there.
Yes, united is better.
Exactly. So if people want to reach out to you, want to find out where they can find your book, where they want to reach out to you and just ask you questions, or even, hire you to come to not come to, but Zoom to their, about their game. Yeah, not yet, but eventually, where can people find you?
Very easy, like CeliaHodent.com. I mean, I made it like super easy, So there's a consulting part. I explain what I do, and you can just click the contact button and then ask me, tell me what you care about. My book, The Gamer's Brain, is pretty much
available everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Fine books are sold.
Yeah, there's a website. You can see the different versions, because it's right now it's in English, it's translated in Japanese, in Korean, and soon going to be published in Russian. And it's in French, of course.
Of course.
Yeah. Of course. And then The Psychology of Video Games, it's you'll find it at Routledge or on Amazon and stuff.
That's great. Well, fantastic. So thank you once again. This has been great. Let's have a virtual round of applause for Celia Hodent.
Thank you for having me. It was really cool. I was really honored to be here. It was my pleasure. And I'm just so surprised. I'm just so in awe every time that people say, "Well, I actually read your book." I'm like, really?
Wow. It's always a bit of a surprise. You're like, "Oh, somebody actually read that thing?" All right. Well, no.
Especially when I read the book of that person. It's like, oh, wow, it's cool.
Well, it's great. I highly recommend The Gamer's Brain. Go read it. And check out Celia's website. It's great. It's got all types of great videos and stuff. Thank you again, our Master of Game Design for this week, Celia Hodent. And if you want to see more Masters of Game Design, you can either check out back episodes on YouTube. Just look for Masters of Game Design. We've got I think at this point, we're almost close to 20. And in the program, all types of great speakers. And please make sure you join our meetup group. And we will do, like we said, we do workshops. We have more Masters of Game Design, and we hope to see you very soon at the next one. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe, take care, and we will see you soon.